Discovering the truth about ourselves is a lifetime's work, but it's worth the effort. Mr. Rogers once said that, and if you haven't been able to tell from the title of this podcast, we're actually going to be talking about PBS. So I have two great friends from our local PBS, which is Mountain Lake PBS, here today. If you would please introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Jen Kowalczyk with Mountain Lake PBS, Director of Engagement and Marketing.
And I am Thom, Hallock, Director of Content, but also host and producer of Mountain Lake Journal, which is our weekly news magazine program on Mountain Lake PBS.
Wonderful, wonderful. So quick, I'm just going to jump right into this. How long have you worked in television, and how long of that was at PBS?
Let me start because I have a much shorter history in television.
That works. Okay.
I have been with Mountain Lake PBS for almost, 11 years now, maybe 12 coming up. And this is my first job in television, and it was my second job out of college. So I didn't start in it because it was for TV. I had worked in the development department, doing individual giving, membership campaigns, that sort of thing, and then moved into more of the digital space and communications.
And I came just a few months after you did, 11 years now, after 12 years at WPTZ here in Plattsburgh, and 25 altogether in commercial television news.
Wow. So that's a lot of history.
36 years.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty good. So, Jen, you do you mind? Can I call you Jen?
Yes.
Do you mind? So, Jen, you and I have met because I'm just going to say this a million times during this podcast. I love PBS. I love it a lot.
Yep.
And I was able to have the fortunate time of my life where I could help out with a fundraiser for PBS, which is known as Platts Nerd.
Yeah, this is a fundraiser we started a couple years ago.
So great.
Not meant to be so much of a fundraiser as sort of a community friend raiser.
Yeah, definitely.
Getting new people in to get connected to Mountain Lake PBS, and sort of people that we might not connect with that might not think of PBS in that way.
Yes, and so you have an individual who's very colorful named Kevin, who was doing a lot of great.
His little baby.
And I've had a ton of fun with Platts Nerd, and I just think the Platts Nerd's a great name. But
that's all Kevin.
it's really great because it really connects to that culture that we actually have this really neat little nerdy culture here in Plattsburgh, which is awesome. So, but what I noticed in being able to be a part of this was how completely wonderfully down to earth and accessible all of you are. And so because of that, I was like, hey, would you like to be on a podcast? So here you are, and this is really great. So let's talk a little bit about what makes PBS different than other other broadcasting stations. So you've got NBC, you've got CBS, you've got, affiliates, ABC's, Fox, and all that. What's PBS? Why is that different?
So, Thom, since you've worked in both.
I think the commercial stations do a great job, and I think they serve the community. But I think ultimately they're looking for profits. And we're a nonprofit, and I think because of that, our mission, we're not worried about making money. We're worried about focusing on our audience and providing quality content for our audience, especially for kids. We of course reach out to everybody, all ages, but especially to kids. That's really our mission, is to build stronger, smarter, kinder kids. Yeah,
it uplifts the community, most definitely. And you mentioned the lack of looking for funding, really. I'm sorry about making money. So PBS is still sponsored by locals and different organizations, right?
I would say that it's not that we're not profit driven, right? We're mission driven, and hopefully we provide a service that the community finds valuable enough that they find it worth supporting. So I think that's one of the differences, and we're getting donations from individuals, but also from businesses that want to sponsor things, like whether it's an event like Platts Nerd or it's a show like Mountain Lake Journal.
Right. That's great. That's a neat way to do things right now, because a lot of times if you were to watch, when I do find my way to watch broadcast television, I get very frustrated at all the commercials. I'm just like, I don't need to buy another car.
Yeah.
You know, it's not what I need. Or Pizza Hut or whatever. But a PBS program, there's usually a little thing right at the beginning or right at the end that just says, hey, these are our sponsors. And then the content, like you said, it was more about educating folks here in the community or the world at large. So I actually went to pbs.org and found a really cool little infographic, which I'll throw some facts. Right. Yeah, nothing shocking, nothing I think that will shock you, but maybe we can talk a little bit about it. First one, and this is from the Nielsen. So for those who don't watch television on a regular basis or understand how ratings work, the Nielsen is one of the bigger companies out there that kind of rate whether a show or a program does well. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Tracks viewing, yep.
So they keep statistics on pretty much everything, which is weird. But nearly 100 million people watch PBS every month.
Yeah.
That's... wow.
And it's available in, 99.8% of households in America, I think.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's ranked number 5 among all broadcasting and cable networks as of last year, which is pretty good because there's a lot of different networks out there.
There's a lot of competition out there, especially in the past few years.
Yeah, when you throw in that cable group, that's a lot of different people.
And streaming services, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, because streaming services is where I get the majority of my PBS. So 82% of households with a television watch PBS.
That's huge.
That's
right?
more than anything,
that's crazy,
really. Yeah. But bringing it to kids, compared to other kids' TV networks, PBS reaches more 2 to 5-year-olds than any other network. That's amazing, and that's actually from the Nielsen's stats. So, but we have, if you buy a cable package from any cable provider, there are the kids packages, and there are dozens upon dozens of children's programming, and PBS just holds rank right at the top. I think that's very important because my son, he is 3 years old, and we just started to allow him to watch television, and so he's watching Sesame Street, which is so great because it brings me back because I love modern Sesame Street, but I like older Sesame Street, and they every once in a while they'll loop in an old cartoon or skit from back in the 80s when I was younger too. So it's that connection
nice
that the three of us.
Nostalgia factor.
Yeah, it really works for me. But one of the things I want to just throw out there is 71% of kids ages 2 to 8 watch PBS too. Now, that you got the kids 2 to 5, but 2 to 8, that's a wide demographic because kids, if you're a parent out there, you have your 1-year-olds, your 2-year-olds, your 3-year-olds. Okay, all right. Sure. But when they hit like 4 and 5 and 6, those are different.
They start to turn
things.
into their own people with their own opinions.
And the fact that some sort of group or company like PBS could have the programming out there to garner interest when there is Nickelodeon and SpongeBob and all that other kind of stuff. And I can't think of a PBS program, at least for kids, that isn't deeply educational.
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier too, the fact that we're mission driven and that when a parent lets their kids sit down in front of PBS, they know that they're not being bombarded for 12 out of those 30 minutes with commercial advertising, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting only, a sponsor message that says, hey, we support this programming, instead of having,
Yeah. I mean, that's actually my biggest hesitation as a parent to let my young son to watch television is the advertising or the reasons why they're putting something on there. I don't want that. He'll watch a YouTube video every once in a while and then they'll have a commercial on the YouTube video and all of a sudden he wants that one toy that they showed the commercial for. Right. And I don't know, if I can keep him from that as much as possible, that's great. But Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, a lot of those PBS core value originals, those are pure in some sort of way, and they connect. And I can't help myself if he's watching it and I'm around or in the same room. I'll sit down and watch the rest of the episode. They might lose me around Elmo, but But that's really wonderful, and being mission driven is super important, because out there, you can either be mission driven or profit driven, really, as far as providing content. And I don't think people disagree that PBS has some sort of civic minded mission out there. So Thom, let me ask you this. You were in you were in broadcasting for our local NBC affiliate as well for a while, and actually, I used to watch you all the time.
Well, thank you.
Good job. So, but what led you to want to go to PBS? I'm sure that's a different type of creature.
It is, and the industry has changed so much. Television news has changed dramatically in the past decade, and so being in it for so long. Many of us are set in our ways, and we enjoy doing our craft how we do it. And so I had the opportunity to go to PBS and continue doing what I love doing the most, going out and doing in-depth stories and interviewing people here in the community. And what really was important to me through the years, being a broadcaster, being a newscaster, Alice Recor, our former general manager, offered me that opportunity at Mountain Lake PBS, and so
you had to take it.
I had to take it.
That's great,
and I really enjoy it. I love being able to do stories about people here in the community, and not have to worry about cutting it down to a minute or a minute 30. That if it runs 7-8 minutes, and that's how long it is to tell the story, we can do that, and that's the great thing about what we do.
That's wonderful. And just to kind of bring in this bit of experience that I am aware of, I am the current chair of the Clinton County Anti-Stigma Coalition, and we actually gave you an award like 2 years ago. So because of the reporting that you have done out in the community. But what I know for a fact is that you don't do it for awards. You don't do it for accolades. You do it because there is a need out in the community, and you're there to broadcast the news. That's very important.
Well, thank you, and that is true. We love to be honored. We love to receive awards, but yes, first and foremost, we love what we do, and we do the public service.
That's
but
wonderful.
I think try to find the stories that maybe are not the ones that are going to be typically covered.
And that's true. That's true as well. We look for, and we go beyond. So much of television is driven by the market size,
sure,
and the market that you're in, the DMA. So if you for example, if in the Central Adirondacks there's a story, the local TV stations here won't necessarily cover it because it's out of their territory.
Right.
We will. We cover the Adirondack Park. We go up into Montreal and Quebec. We'll go to Glens Falls, which is the Albany television market. But if there's a great story that people here would love to hear about, we go and do those. So we don't have those boundaries.
Well, so when I was younger, I would get my news from the news from Channel 5 or Channel 3 or whatever news, and as I'm growing older and kind of tired of the hype, I find that I get my news from two sources only, and that would have to be PBS and NPR. And I don't even love all the stuff that I get on NPR, so I understand that I'm not going to find necessarily always the breaking news about something, because that's not really where your concern is.
And that's their specialty, to do the news of the day and weather and the immediate news. And that's what they do, and they do it well. But yes, we love to not have to do that. We love to be able to go out and find the stories that are relevant and timely, but they're not the day up stories.
But when you do a story, I could watch that story, and then a couple months later, if it's up on a streaming service again or on your PBS app or something, I can watch it again, and it feels like I'm still connected to that part of the community, and I appreciate that. So thank you. But let's lead to another question I had, and that was, aside from funding, because everybody always has issues with funding, what are some of the difficulties that you face while working at Mountain Lake PBS?
Well, because of funding, our staff is small. We've had cutbacks in our staff over the past decade, like many other businesses, like many other broadcasters, but that can make it difficult because we're so small. Projects that we would like to take on, we can't necessarily because we simply don't have the manpower to do it.
Wow. Okay. Wow, I didn't think of that.
Definitely the biggest challenge for me too.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of things that we'd like to try, and I think it's finding that balance of trying new things and then getting the work done so that you're still providing the service that you need to provide.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So Would you say that you have to do less now because of the lack of support that you have, where it's like, people working with you and for you? You almost have to do
just
less?
the opposite. You have to do more.
Right.
We all have to do more. Maybe the what we turn out is less. We can't do the number of programs. We can't do the new programs that we would like.
We do what we have. I think one of the bigger transitions, I think, is that we less frequently do sort of big documentary style projects, like sort of those 1 hour specials.
Right.
So we have not been embarking on those as much and doing much more short format things.
Okay.
The days of being able to spend a year on a project to produce a 1 hour documentary, we just can't do that anymore.
Right. And so for our listeners, both Thom and Jen came in on a day where most of this area has been shut down because of a massive snowstorm. But like myself, I work for a not-for-profit that has a very few amount of people. There's still stuff that needs to be done, so I ended up going into work. And that's the case for the two of you as well, right?
That's right.
Okay, and I appreciate you taking the time for this podcast. So this is a podcast about mental health, and this is a podcast that considers that our daily life and our daily activities lead to the quality of our mental health. So how would you find working for PBS affects your mental health?
It can be stressful,
Sure.
and a lot of that again goes to what we just talked about with the loss of positions and doing more. I think so many people are doing more now.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so it affects us just as it does others. And when you have a program, whether it's a weekly program like ours or a daily program, you still have deadlines in journalism, and so you have the stress of deadlines with less people to produce that program. So
you wear more hats.
Yeah, we wear more hats. I think a lot of people do.
I'd say on the other hand of that, though, I think that I finish my days feeling, not every day, but some days I finish my days feeling like, boy, I really did a thing that I am proud of, and that really did. There was a benefit to it, right?
Yeah.
So like when we run a kids event, for example, I often leave those kids events feeling like, that was really worth my time and the effort that went into it all week. Or
right.
Yeah.
You're pouring a lot more of yourself into your projects because there's a lot less to share with other people, right? Or there's more to share, but there's less people to share it with.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. Well, how do you take care of your health then? Your mental health?
I'm lucky to have a good support system. I have a nice home with a husband who is very supportive and 2 dogs that give me kisses when I get home. So
perfect.
That really makes coming home great. And I try not to like small things, like I try not to check my work email when I'm not at work, so I'm not sort of just keeping myself in the grind of things.
Right. That's a problem for me too. Yeah.
And this may surprise you. I don't tend to watch a lot of television outside of work, especially weekends. We will try to get out and do things, and so we do have to work weekends occasionally. You'll have children's events at the stations. I'll have events I have to cover or host, like Honor Flight and other events that go on on the weekends. But other than that, I really try to take the weekend days off and
separate your work and your personal life a little bit. Yeah, that's really great. So I'm assuming that before either of you worked at PBS, you watched PBS, correct?
Yes,
I did.
So what was your favorite PBS program, or is your favorite PBS? No. You know what? Let's do both. What was your favorite PBS program?
I have favorite PBS memories.
Okay, that's great.
So like as a kid, I have these memories of sitting with my grandfather I was really young, like 3 or 4, I think, but we would watch. It must have been Live at Lincoln Center or whatever. So we're watching these orchestras. I used to play the violin when I was very little too. So we used to watch these orchestras, and I just have these memories sitting in my grandpa's lap watching them together. So that's a good childhood memory. Now I think Nova, it might be my favorite. Those quantum mechanics, I can't understand it, but I can't get enough.
No, but I mean, it's the show about our future, and it's realistic.
I know,
it's
I love
so
it.
good.
Yeah.
It's so good. I agree with you on Nova.
This is hard to believe. I grew up in a very rural area outside of Albany. If you go outside of Albany 50 miles into the Catskills, we couldn't receive any of the PBS stations. So
bummer.
We didn't have PBS growing up, so I really didn't see it until I was in college and working. But two of the programs that I have loved through the years have been Nature and also Frontline. I watched Frontline when I worked in commercial television because I thought then, as I still do now, that it's the best journalism on television. With the tip of the hat to 60 Minutes, I think Frontline is the best investigative reporting that you'll find on television.
Because it's somewhat probably unfettered by sponsorship, where they don't have to worry about saying something because they might lose a sponsor. That's just really cool. Yeah. I'd watch a movie about Frontline. I would totally watch that movie.
A
documentary or like a movie starring, Bruce Willis as like, the hard-hatted whatever, That'd be fun. But what do you enjoy now, Thom? Frontline?
Still Frontline.
Okay, that's great.
And Nature. Nature was always a Sunday night event for us.
Yeah.
We would watch it, and now it's Wednesday night, but it's still one
you
of my
probably
favorite
DVR
programs.
And watch it on Sundays.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. How do you know that?
You're a creature of habit.
I do. Yes.
When I was younger, we got. I grew up in Jay, New York, and we had NBC would come in, and it would be really fuzzy, but PBS came in perfectly, nice. And I loved all of the children's television. I still do, but my favorite PBS moments were like in the middle of the night. There would be random weird shows or movies or like science fiction, or they would show that, and you wouldn't see that anywhere else because PBS maybe they were just filling a time slot of some sort. But I was exposed more science fiction and really wonderful like foreign films with subtitles. And I remember definitely knowing what was coming out and knowing what was going to be on, and going to bed early, waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning just so I could watch something.
That's great.
And it still sticks with me because we now live in a generation where if you want to watch something and you've got the time, you can watch it on your phone, on demand. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine but think that has affected broadcast television in a whole. So how does PBS keep up with that, with the whole need for streaming?
So pretty much everything that PBS does is available for streaming for a limited window, and then as a membership benefit, you can become a member of PBS and get access to the whole window of things. I will say that PBS has been a little bit slower on the uptake than I think some of our some of the other systems have been, but I would say now that the streaming setup is pretty decent, and it's the benefit to it is if you get a PBS app on your Roku or on your phone or wherever you want to stream media, it'll ask you to choose a station, and then when you do, you'll be able to see local content as well. So that's a nice benefit for us as
which
a station.
We do. Which I do. That's really wonderful. So would you say most, if not all, is available?
I think almost everything is for a limited window. So it's after the premiere, it's available for something like 2 weeks.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. If you can't watch something in 2 weeks, then come on, right?
Did you really want to see it?
Exactly.
Although I still have stuff on my DVR.
I know. I'm
months and months and months. I'll get to it.
Okay. Well, so let me ask you. So, in what way does public television benefit people in our area?
I brought with me a quote that we received from a member because I think it is perfect for this.
That's great.
This is a member in Montreal. Your station is one of the sole reasons that I can maintain my sanity in these turbulent, unpredictable times. We cannot change a lot of things in this life, but we can choose quality programming to watch in the relative safety of our homes. Mountain Lake PBS allows me to quietly absorb the type of programming that subtly percolates into all my senses and gives me hope that the future is brighter than a lot of media would have us believe.
That's wonderful.
Isn't that nice?
That's wonderful. Plus, I'd have to say, when I watch Mountain Lake PBS or even using the streaming app, I feel like I'm streaming something local. I feel like it was made for us in this area. And I would like to think that any place in America that has PBS that allows you to do the local programming, it's that little touch, right? Like you're not trying to fill the need of some demographic. You're doing something that represents what's going on in the community.
Well, I think it's really important for people in a community to sort of see themselves reflected in their media, right? So it's people that sound like you and people that are maybe people that you know. But I think that's one of the reasons that I know that you like to cover the Adirondacks, because they don't have media stations that are covering their stories down there.
No, it's around here. Our local news stations, and no offense, usually cover stuff that goes on in Burlington.
That's where the market is,
and or maybe even Albany, and it is refreshing to see a piece that takes place in Keene, because stuff does happen up there, and it's great to see that. So if somebody doesn't have a television or doesn't have access to cable or antenna, which is becoming more common than it was, what's the best way? Now, you'd mentioned the streaming app on Roku and on your phone, but that would probably be it.
Yeah, so that's an easy way to do it if you like to use some sort of those mobile streaming apps. I think it's available on Apple TV and Roku and maybe Xbox, Fire TV, sort of a whole smattering of things. But look for the PBS app. But otherwise, we also post everything to our website, and we, beyond just having full episodes of things, we break segments out as well. So if there was a particular story that you were interested in that you saw Thom do, or there was a story that you saw Derek or Jack or whoever do, that story alone is available too.
Yes, and so I love that when you go to pbs.org, you get a pop-up that says choose your station.
Yeah, yep.
Which is great. And then the content does filter for that, which is really wonderful. And actually is where I actually watch a lot of PBS stuff is off of your website, because it just works for me.
Yeah.
I get a lunch break. Lunch break, I'm like, oh, what's going on PBS? Oh, that's really cool. All right. So now, do you still do the fundraising? Like, you used to have those like telethons. I just don't see them as often, I guess, anymore.
Well, that's one of the challenges to streaming, right? For fundraising, right?
Right,
because we don't have the
it's not as live.
You don't have the telethon online. We still do pledge drives on broadcast television. We do them less frequently live now because the technology has changed, because our staffing has changed, just for a variety of reasons.
Well, people don't watch television live as much anymore. Live events are less people are watching the Super Bowl than ever, and less people are watching presidential debates and such. A lot less now, because every other news media outlet is going to pick up the highlights and feed it to you in a 2-minute segment, which I don't know if that's good or bad. It's just kind of the change. So speaking of that change, how is PBS changing? Now you have less staff, and you are doing a lot. Each person is doing a lot more work. But what's the future look like for Mountain Lake PBS?
Well, I think producing content that you're going to see on multiple platforms. We're figuring that not everyone is going to sit down and see it as a broadcast, that they're going to watch on their devices, on their tablets, on their phones, and so to produce content that we can have in a variety of places, and to figure that the days of someone sitting down and watching a live event for 3 hours on us are fading. And so we really need to think about that when we produce our content.
Yeah.
And then taking the content also and sort of like, as you produce it, we're thinking about how is this going to look and work on a mobile device. So, when we put that little web address up there, are you going to be able to see it at all when you look at it on a phone? So keeping in mind how things are going to translate from one medium to the next is important for us. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this back to mental health a little bit. So say any of our listeners, just for some reason, have not checked out PBS and are interested in how PBS could benefit their mental health. What would you say? What would you say to sell PBS to this one person about how it would affect their quality of life?
Well, I know our program addresses a number of local issues, mental health issues among them. So they're likely to see, over the course of several weeks, interviews with newsmakers, with people from the community who are working on their behalf, events that they may not hear about elsewhere in the other media, organizers out of the Darkness Walk, and things like that. So not only will we cover the events, but we will have the organizers come in and talk about it. And that's kind of where we're different. We will talk about it in depth for 10, 15 minutes and so that we really cover the issue, not the 30 seconds that you often see elsewhere. And so I think consistently over weeks and months, they'll see these issues covered in the community.
That's great. So it allows individuals to have almost a deeper dive on local issues and local happenings that they wouldn't necessarily get on a 30-second snippet. Okay.
And I would say in the more day-to-day sense, for me anyway, sometimes you can start to feel overwhelmed by the quantity of news that maybe you are taking in, or the sort of the speed of the content that you're watching, and if you turn on NewsHour instead of a 24-hour news station, it's almost like watching slow news. Like, it's in some ways it's like kind of boring, but in some ways it's really refreshing at the same way.
It's a different.
It's just a shift in tone that I think, if you find yourself becoming anxious, maybe consider your media habits, what you are consuming, and think about if that is affecting things. So I mean, even a routine of tuning into nature because if you find it relaxing, or putting Bob Ross on. Bob Ross is on Netflix, but
yes,
those little shifts in your consuming habits, I think.
Yeah. Bob Ross, an old school public television
icon,
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, made the show because it was his passion, not because he wanted to make money.
And people are riveted.
And I mean, I always think it's so funny. My daughter, who's 12. Her friends have Bob Ross T-shirts, and I'm like, you know who Bob Ross is? What? I mean, he passed away before that person was born.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. So PBS is definitely iconic as far as its place in the world. But how do you feel? And I guess this is just me reshaping the same question over again. But how do you feel Mountain Lake PBS fits in the North Country? You've already established that the type of reporting, and you will report on other things that might not necessarily get the coverage. Mm-hmm. But if I wanted to learn more about life up here in Plattsburgh, New York, or Clinton County, or the Adirondacks, why should I tune into Mountain Lake PBS?
Well, because I think you'll see stories there that you won't see elsewhere, by Derek Mearden and by Jack down in the Adirondacks, about people, places, and things that make the Adirondacks so special. Places to check out, people to meet, foods to try, places to go, and that, yes, you may see elsewhere, but these guys are great storytellers, and they'll take you on a journey.
Right, and it's not paid for or put together by some sort of tourist group that are just trying to get you to go to the McDonald's in Lake Placid. Yeah. It's like, this guy had a really great experience. He's doing an episode about a show on his experience.
A little thing about Derek going to visit somebody who has like a little train, small die-cast collection. I mean, like stories that you just wouldn't find. You're not going to find them in a tourist book because they're not.
That's
something that
awesome.
You're going to go visit. And I think the other hand of what we do is, we try to position ourselves as sort of as a convener of other organizations that are working in this region. So whether that's with we recently hosted a forum with the Spark Coalition mm-hmm. on the opioid crisis, and we host those kinds of things fairly routinely, but trying to bring together the people that are working on issues in the community that can sort of help illuminate the work that's happening.
And politics, we still are true to our mission of presenting political debates and covering politics, and that's fading too. A lot of debates are no longer covered, and so that's important to us, and we still will do the political debates.
And not one-sided, whereas like sometimes someone will host a political debate or talk about politics, but really they have probably another agenda, whereas PBS is just there to say, hey, we're going to ask the questions. Whatever they say is the answer. So we were talking before we started to record a little bit. We talked a little bit about how I've seen you, Thom, host live events where you're asking politicians questions and you get callers calling in, and you've got to be on your toes because you don't know what that caller is going to say, and this is live. So
callers or audience members asking questions, you never know what they're going to choose to ask about.
That's got to be exciting, but it's also refreshing because it's not necessarily set up that way, which it's great.
It is. It's refreshing. It's relieving, though, when they ask something relevant and on topic.
And not for 10 minutes.
Right.
That's true. That's true. There have been a couple times where I've watched something and I've been frustrated. It's like,
what are you saying?
Where are you going?
Is that a question? That's not a question. That's a statement.
This is a rant.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming here to this show where we're going to do what we can to get the information out there. And if I could get somebody who's maybe on the fence about PBS to love PBS as much as I do, I feel like that'll be a win for me. But what are some of the upcoming projects that PBS, Mountain Lake PBS, are working on that we can look forward to?
Well, in the next few months, we're tackling the huge issue of climate change. We're going to be working on special reports and a special program. A study from SUNY Plattsburgh says the Adirondacks are warming twice as fast as the rest of the globe. And if that isn't alarming, so the impact, I think many people hear about the United Nations report in 2040 and what could be happening around the world, but truly there could be dramatic impact on the Adirondacks, on the wildlife, on our way of life. And so we'll be doing a number of reports on that in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, and how would somebody see this? Just by going to pbs.org and finding information, or
going to our website and also watching Mountain Lake Journal? Will be promoting that, and it'll be all of the segments will be part of Mountain Lake Journal. We may have events out in the community to look for that will bring together experts, and we'll bring together people who are working to tackle this, and so we'll certainly let everyone know when and where that's happening.
Sounds exciting.
It is. It's so important, and it's a little scary, to be honest.
I mean, this is our home.
I think
we should learn about it.
I think so many people think, well, that's not happening here in the Adirondacks. We're higher, we're cooler, we're not near the coast, and I don't think that
and we
maybe
saw that study, and it was like
maybe they're aware that this could have quite a serious impact on us.
Yeah, and you know what I love to, and not to completely change the topic of our discussion about climate change, but what I like to know is that whether you believe what reason is the reason that it's happening, or if it's happening at all, we still need to talk about it. We still need to learn about it. Mm-hmm. It's not going to hurt us to understand more, and that is a leap that PBS is always willing to go, even if it's not necessarily popular, or a lot of people are just saying, "Oh, that's phooey, fake news." PBS will still do the work that needs to just try to answer a couple of hard to ask questions. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. So Jen, what else do we have to look forward to?
I'll throw in a pitch for our upcoming kids events. Our next one is coming up in April. Those are always a blast. It's for the whole family can come, but we call them our PBS Playdates, and they're designed for kids ages 3 to 8, but of course the entire family is welcome. We often have little ones who can't quite walk yet come with their older siblings.
Oh, what a great thing to do.
So you come with your whole family. Kids and parents will watch a PBS Kids episode together. Then we'll do usually a little read along, and then kids will go and participate in all these hands-on learning activities that try and relate some hands-on stuff to the theme of the kids show that they just watched. So they're always a blast and very popular, and everybody takes home a free book. So our next one's coming up in April.
So and the event itself is how much?
Free.
They're all free. And
all free.
Where would you go for these events?
I'm announcing it here before I think I have any of the promotional material out, but a good way to find out about these things is you can sign up for our newsletter, mountainlake.org. Mm-hmm. You can follow us on Facebook is another great way to find out about our upcoming events.
Yep.
Or just check in periodically.
That's wonderful.
Many of them happen at the station, right in the station.
Almost all of them, yep.
And then on occasion we get out
and actually, we've just started over the last couple months, starting to work with a few partner libraries and small communities to help us get a smaller version of these playdates out into communities that where
wouldn't
it's
have access to downtown Plattsburgh.
It's a little too far for them to drive, or they may not have reliable transportation, whatever the reason is. But we bring these little events to partner libraries as well.
So what's the address for your studio? I always think it's the cutest thing in the world.
1 Sesame Street.
always wanted to live on Sesame Street.
Whoever did that.
That's so
I mean, it's
great.
sort of like a long driveway that we named as a road.
It works. It
perfect.
works.
We
you
get a
know.
lot of visitors. They think it's a way to cut over to the mall. So
Well, and
people
we
turn
have-
on the Sesame Street all the time, I think, looking to,
Then
to
you'd
get
be like,
through.
hey,
But-
well, you're here. Have you heard of...
And we have a big cardboard cutout of Big Bird in the lobby, and so often
Oh,
a
I
little
know.
kid will come in.
Love
oh
it.
my God, is this where Big Bird
And you
Bird
say
lives
yes.
here? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, he does.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, thank you both for being here, and this has just been a pleasure. I'm slightly awestruck because I absolutely think the two of you do super important work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And if you have any questions for Thom or Jen, you can email me and I can forward it to them. I'm sure that both of them are easy to get a hold of
Yes, we are.
through Mountain Lake PBS. But my email is nick@nami-cv.org. And let us know how you feel about this episode. And maybe if we're lucky, we can have Jen and Thom back to talk about something else. So thank you. And take care of yourselves,
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
too.
because we all know that survival is so much more than staying alive.